It takes more than guts to be a gangster. It takes good ideas. And I hope these ideas help KP and help you. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Gangster KT and have a very special guest with me today. Really excited to do this video and have this conversation. So this is Kicking Pigeons, KP for short, and he is an alliance member. He is a captain in our alliance and an overall great player. So KP, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks for the great intro there. Yeah, Kicking Pigeons. I've been playing this game since shortly after global launch, and I've gone through all the highs and lows that I think everybody has gone through. And yeah, right now I've kind of fallen away from what you might consider the meta in Crucible, and reached out and asked for some assistance because Lord knows I need it.
We'll appreciate that. And again, I think this will be a lot of fun. So this video today is gonna be going through Kicking Pigeons Crucible teams, where he's at right now, talking through maybe some recommendations and changes, and then at the end we'll close it out with kind of a final list of recommendations. And really want to approach this. This season's going to be over in I think about 3 weeks. I know it's extended a little bit. So this specific advice may not be that valuable for too much longer, but the overall approach, how you plan your offenses and defenses, I think will be applicable, into future seasons. So again, really looking forward to this. KP, thanks for joining me, man, and sending me the info on your teams here, and we'll start looking through them.
Of course. Yeah.
All right. So first off, in room one, you have the Young Avengers. I always kind of thought of them as Infinity Watch Light. They hang around a long time. They have survivability, not quite like Infinity Watch, obviously. But any rationale for having them here, or have you had any success with that?
Yeah, success, no, not recently. But initially I put them there because they were working. A lot of these teams were set up towards the very beginning of Crucible, or at 2 to 3 seasons ago, and I just kind of stopped caring. I would just move them around and slot something in here and there if I felt like it might help, but I didn't put much thought into this currently. At one point, everything that was there made sense, just not today. Not when it matters.
Yeah, and see maybe a few examples of that with Room 2 there as well, and knowing those old rules. So I do remember when Crucible came out, we were all using Young Avengers. So that's fair. And I think one thing to take a step back, every season there's kind of an inflection point that I call it. Like it takes a couple weeks to figure out, but there's kind of like a key room that, knowing how to counter, having the right defense can really be a big deal for the overall match. And right now I do think that's room 1. Because of that, striker assist rule that's there. And so I do think it's important to try and have a pretty strong team in room 1, and everything can be countered right now, but one that has an RNG chance of getting you a win or at least being inefficient. So right now, and we'll summarize this at the end where we land, but I'd really recommend using secret defenders in this room, which is kind of the current counter that most people are using, I think, and then different variants that you can add to just try and get that initial speed boost and get ahead. I see a lot of people using Nor. I know from looking through your roster, you don't have your Nor built. So for your roster, I would recommend using Spider-Man Big Time as the 5th and having him here. He can throw some things off with getting that early turn, with his alt flipping a lot of those buffs. So probably not, but can be a difference maker in that match. So that'd be what I'd recommend for room 1 there.
Let me apologize for not building him out, by the way. I know that's
I take it personally.
He's a very special character to you, so that is my bad, and we'll fix that soon.
Nice. Not worth building, but I think it's the only place I really see him used much. He's got some niche usage, but again, I think the secret defenders 4, and then having Spider-Man Big Time as the 5th, and we'll cover that again at the end. But that can definitely get some wins and really require at least them using Superior 6 or Apocalypse or Scroll to beat it. So room 2, my guess is this was from the time where the Bifrost rules were here, and this team was nearly invincible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought if it wasn't broke, don't fix it. Or rather, I didn't realize it was broke. I gotta say too, I want to jump in a little bit just to defend myself, because I'm sure anyone seeing this just thinks I'm insane. There was a moment there where I just was, trying to lose in Crucible. I was sort of tanking myself down because I didn't care. The rewards didn't seem all that great. I felt like I had more currency than I knew what to do with, although you can see I'm running out of the gold there. And periodically we'd get those events, right, that benefited the whole alliance with Crucible wins. So I thought, oh, that's a great way to contribute to everybody, is just try when it matters. And well, now not now that we have diamonds in the rewards, I'd like to get some of those.
Yeah.
So
no, I think that made it a huge difference. Like, you're spot on there, and it's pretty important now. And it's not a ton, but getting 3 diamonds a week's nice, no question.
Yeah, it's definitely better than none.
Yeah. No question. So, KP, I'll say I think this is okay. It's a huge team, so kudos there. Like, you definitely have this team built big. You have a diamond on Vol, who's the best character. So I think this could throw people off, and people got good at countering it last season, but probably don't remember that as much this season. So I personally like to use Vol on offense, but again, that's preference. So this is okay. We'll have maybe a recommendation at the end. I'd maybe consider looking at IW here if you're interested in using Vol on offense. If not, I think this team's okay because of how big they are, and you have the power in the right place.
Thanks.
So getting on to number 3. So this is Nowhere. Very interesting team. How's this do for you overall?
I used to actually get quite a few defensive wins here. Not as much anymore. And when I first threw them on here, everybody was really low. 3 to 5 red star, or 3 to 5 stars in red. And it didn't matter a whole lot. I just thought there was something new and different, and that was it. That was the whole rationale when I put them where I did. But yeah, now it feels no different. It seems like, especially lately, everything I've got up here can just kind of get swept with one shot. So that's when I kind of realized some changes were needed to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think this is similar. I think this is a pretty good team, and no real concerns with it. I do think Nowhere is kind of in a rotation of maybe 2 or 3 teams that can make that 5th or 6th slot on your defense. In the room you have them in is okay there. Like, no concerns with that. That is the room that gets the power buffs where the Toons can do their ult a lot first turn, where they get the 2 extra ultimate energy. So we'll have some recommendations around that and what I'm more used to seeing there. But again, this isn't bad, and I think a team worth having on your defense if you don't want Nova for offense. So moving on here to room 4. I've got to switch the screen. 1 second. All right, so moving on to room 4 here. So this I thought was a pretty good team, and again, you have them really good size. Jealous of that T18 Dormammu there. That's pretty sharp looking. So I think they're good. I think a lot of times you'll see Quicksilver used in that 4th spot or that 5th spot instead of Dormammu, but when you see something a lot, people get used to countering it. And not that Dormammu is going to change that match a whole ton, but I think it's an interesting nuance. And if you like it, I'd stick with it. Go ahead.
Yeah, they hold actually pretty well. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head if they're in the best spot for them currently, but they do a good job. I usually will score at least 1 to 2 over the Crucible week defensive wins there. And rationale behind that, when I first did it, that was I just wanted something that was going to be a roadblock. And when I first set them in there, I think towards the very beginning of this starting, they were. But, people would just get legitimately upset that I had that there, and they'd waste all their attacks in that exact spot every time. So, that was the thought process of throwing that team down.
Yeah. So no, again, I mean, especially, if it's working for you, don't change it. That's the best input you can have. So a couple things to consider. So one thing with Dormammu right now, because the Superior 6 rules, those characters can remove the revive. So it does hurt his value a little bit. But again, I think there's value in having something different than just what normally people have with Quicksilver. The other thing to consider is maybe looking at putting them in room 3. Again, that's more standard and people are used to it, but room 3 does allow Heartless to ult on turn 1. and Dormammu would ult on turn 1 as well. So can have things that would throw people off to really leverage the power of those characters. So again, if it's working in 4, it's probably not worth changing, but that'd be one thing to consider.
Excellent.
So getting on to room 5, admittedly haven't seen this team on defense for a few seasons. So do you get wins with this? I'm
No,
curious.
no,
No, okay.
not at all. It's useful as a football bat, as I've been told.
Nice. So yeah, back when they got all the special, Eternals and Tangle Web got all those bonuses in that room. This team was tough, and until New Warriors came out, it was really hard to beat. That's different now, and that aligns with your comments there. The one thing I'd say, where this is definitely a recommendation to change this, I think right there you have 2 really powerful teams combined, but they have fairly easy counters with the way their kits worked. But on offense, you can use those kits in the best way for you, how you want. So like as one example, Tangle Web would counter this team in and of itself. And because when Weaver gets those charges, as long as your Weaver went first, it would then make those Eternals alts miss, and is a fairly straightforward counter. So to me, like having one meta team being able to beat 2 meta teams, like that's not the trade-offs wanted. And I know you know that, obviously. So I would recommend breaking this one up because those are 2 really powerful teams for offense right now, in my opinion. So if they're getting wins for you, I'd say stick with it. But if they aren't, I think this is one to change.
Yeah, they need to go. They're not doing anything except holding the spot.
Fair enough. And finally, room 6, Rebirth. I think this is another one I'd say is okay. Nothing egregious by any means, but I think there's better opportunities. They're okay as one of the last teams, and you do have them very big. So if that's your 6th best defense, I think that's okay. But when you look at your teams holistically, I think your sentiment is correct. That the Dormammu Darkhold team's pretty strong, but besides that, overall, definitely want some more strength on defense, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's why I came to the Master.
Very nice to you. Okay, so this is just to show everyone. These were the teams that Kicking Pigeons had saved for his offensive squads. Anything you want to highlight there, or I think most people are used to cookie cutter teams, but any comments on that?
So I mean, I don't know how special it is, but the secret Avengers with Kestrel and Fury, I threw that in there solely because I was running into a lot of invaders. Yeah. And they crushed that team every time, regardless of size. And that was just like always an easy win and quick and pretty quick. Everything else was, honestly, I grabbed a team and threw it in there and saved it without thinking too much about it because I was like, oh, I use these guys, and it automatically goes to that tab. So that was strictly the thought process of what I have set up on offense here.
Yeah, no, and I think you have MOE there, you have New Warriors there, you have Gamma there. Like I think when I saw this, my takeaway, and similar to what we just talked about, it's too much strength. And that's good. Hopefully you're clearing everything, but you definitely are finishing each match with some strength on the bench. And ideally, it's very hard to get there. There's so much variability, but ideally you want as much as you can on defense to where you're kind of pulling at strings to get together that last win, knowing then you've optimized your defense. So again, I don't think anything egregious, KP. I think you have the right teams. You definitely know what you're talking about. Just a few tweaks that we can look at here to hopefully get you that diamond.
Excellent. Yeah. I've made the effort on my own, and that's gotten me to like Platinum 1, but people are actually trying in Platinum. So any edge I can get is going to be appreciated.
Yeah, well, good. So this is what I'd say is just kind of the final recommendations with 2 S's there, since I obviously can't type. So these are what I'd recommend for defense rooms, and we'll go through some nuance versus just this list. And I'll say this is pretty common with what I'm seeing, at least with where I am I'm in Diamond 2, close to Diamond 3 right now. And pretty common to see these teams and also what I'm using in a lot of places. But I think there's a reason for that. And I do think these will be an upgrade for you and hopefully help you get those wins. So we talked about it before, but the defense rooms, I would recommend Secret Defenders in room 1. And, if you want to look at using Scroll there, that's a very strong team as the fifth. We talked about Nor, but I think for your roster, I like having Scroll on offense right now. But either one's fine, depending on your play style. And so I would probably go with Big Time as the fifth there for room one. Like we talked about before, for room two, I would recommend either Nowhere or IW. Just because they're great for efficiency. I know you like the Nowhere team, and I think it's not going to be one of your best defenses, but definitely as good as the fifth or sixth, best defense on your roster. So room three, I'm a little hesitant with this after you'd mentioned this is winning for you in room four, because that's what's most important. But I do think that room bonus is really well suited for the Darkhold team. And again, I think it's kind of cool. You're trying something different there with Dormammu as opposed to Quicksilver or just full Darkhold, which isn't nearly as good. So if you don't need Dormammu on offense, I think it's worth keeping him there and trying it and see how it goes. So room four is going to be a new one, and this is really kind of quickly becoming one of the meta Crucible defenses, and it is a pain in the ass to fight, whether you're using Superior 6 or MOE. I have to bring in Apocalypse to fight it to make sure I win, and that's the new Extreme X-Men team. So who would have ever thought we were saying, hey, the new raid team's great in Crucible, right? But they really are here. So depending where you have them, the full Extreme team works very well. I'll also say you're already pulling Gambit off of Unlimited, so don't really have the Unlimited team anymore. And Rogue can be a very powerful character with this team too. So if you don't have your Sunspot fully built, or Forge, the newer characters built, Rogue is a great tune that can plug into here. Dazzler can be a good fifth as well, kind of depending on how big you have it and trying different things. But making sure to use Nightcrawler, Gambit, Rogue. And then again, you could throw. I have Dormammu with that team actually, just as a random guy. But other power there, or Sunspot and Forge if you haven't built.
Awesome.
Number 5, and this is because you have them huge. I can tell you like your raid teams, KP. Good job. Way to be a good alliance mate there.
Yeah.
So room 5 rules, where it removes the debuffs at the start of any mutant's turn, can actually be pretty tricky. And there's definitely counters to this, but with the size of your Death Seed, I think you leverage that room buff and you throw your Death Seed in room 5 and hope you can get some sneaky wins there. Lastly, for room 6, so my initial recommendation was Gamma, and Gamma's a pretty good team still. So part of that was just trying to get a little more strength on your defense, versus having maybe like a Wakanda's here or Nowhere Infinity Watch that you didn't put in room 2. But again, I think like we talked about before, with the size of your Bifrost or Rebirth, either of those would be fine there as well if you'd prefer to keep Gamma on offense. So before we get into what that then leaves for offense, which is a really important part of selecting your defense teams, any questions or thoughts on those defense recommendations?
No, I think that it makes sense. It's pretty clear, and I appreciate the feedback. So I'll definitely be making these changes.
Okay, and one thing I would say, and I need to do a little more of this myself, but something I've always tried to do, it's almost like just as important to catch people off guard as it is to have the right team. Because again, you can have the best defense, but if you can go watch 4 videos on how to counter it perfectly, that best defense isn't doing that much. So I would take these recommendations and then I would make a few unique twists to it. Make it your own. Pull out a random character that you maybe think's the worst on that team and plug someone else in that you think might have a good synergy or might just make someone pause or throw them off or change their approach to it. I really think that can be extra valuable, even if it slightly decreases, technically the power of your defense.
I definitely see the value in that. I mean, if you compare that to War, when people first started throwing in a different fifth instead of Iron Fist for Heroes for Hire. The first time I ran into that, I tripped up on it pretty hard. So I see how that could be beneficial in defense and Crucible as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And good example there. You're exactly right. So this defense overall, I'd say this would still be a fairly offense-heavy roster. With the size of like your Death Seed and some of your teams, I think it is a formidable defense. But in general, this should allow you to hopefully one-shot everything on your opponent, where it may come down to efficiency, and you have a few things to hopefully trip them up there. Um, but I'll say, that's how I see it play out where I'm in Diamond. May look different at Platinum 1, and maybe this is a more solid defense there. But it does leave you quite a bit of strength on offense. And I think the way I've always framed it in my head, there's kind of four, custom, or not custom, but cookie cutter offensive meta teams right now. And that's Tangled Web, MOE, New Warriors, and Superior 6. So those are always my four starting points, and I figure out, hey, where am I going to use those four teams for my offensive matches and to get the most efficiency and to make sure I can counter. So you have those four solid teams that you'll always use. I think Eternals for me is definitely a fifth there, and one I count and use on every Crucible. But I got lucky and got a 3 Diamond Icarus, so that's enabled a lot and made that team a lot more reliable for counters. So it may not be for everyone. But if you're going against a Pegasus, using like Eternals, Omega Red, Falcon, and Shang-Chi, Pegasus doesn't take a turn. It's unbelievable. And so I do think they're a really reliable fifth that you'll be able to use most of your matches with a few other characters depending on who you're fighting.
That's a really unique offense. Yeah, I probably wouldn't have put that together on my own. So thank you.
Well, and I sure didn't either. But I saw it in another video. But so sure don't want to take credit for it, but we'll steal those ideas anytime I see them.
Absolutely.
So that's a great one. But Eternals just work really well. They can beat new Avengers. Now it's getting a little tougher as the new Avengers are getting bigger now that they're farmable. But you can do a Speed Eternals team to beat the new Avengers pretty easily. Same with the Conda. You take some hits at the start, so it's not the best for efficiency. But once Icarus goes and flips all those buffs into debuffs, the match is over. So they're really good at taking out some of those lower tier defensive teams. So at that point, you have your four every match cookie cutters. You got your Eternals is your fifth with some variant, usually probably using Emma or Loki to get some speed advantage. So then it's just coming up with the sixth team. And so some natural teams that you might have left are War Dogs or Undying, and occasionally I will use them, but definitely not every match. But normally for that sixth team, what I'll use, Scroll, obviously, when I have him on offense, and then just some of these other, what I call plug and play characters right now that are so valuable and really kind of the key to optimizing offense. So that's Scroll, that's Apocalypse, Vol, Nova, Kestrel, Quicksilver. So again, with the defense recommendation here, and feel free to use some of those plug and play characters for your nuance or changing up your defense because you have a lot of them left. But it does allow about 5 really strong characters that you can use with your other teams as needed. Like a lot of times I'll use Apocalypse with MOE on a Secret Defenders team on room 1, or maybe on the new extreme team in room 4 or 5 that's really tough. But still does leave just a lot of big characters, to get down that last room. Kind of no matter what it is, if it's a smaller Infinity Watch or if it is a Wakanda team, like you'll have these massive meta characters with stuns with ability blocks that you can pretty much get through any last room you need to.
It's always fun to bring a little overkill every now and then.
It is. And one thing I've been trying to do recently, it's not the best for efficiency, but like really figuring out where, if I need it, scrawls speed gains, when opponents get buffs can really like do crazy things. And 2 examples of that are the War Dogs, and which is probably too easy to use Scrawl, though he works. But then Superior 6, when Lizard, all the buffs Superior 6 starts with, and then Lizard's alt, copies and spreads all buffs. Like Scrawl will start with 2 turns in a row at that match and then quickly get to his ultimate. And like even against Superior 6, that match is almost over. Just because of Scrawl getting all that speed from those buffs. So he's a great plug and play for more power on the team to take out almost anything, or just for a cleanup of a team like War Dogs if you need them, or taking out a big team like Superior 6.
Yeah, Scroll's been super fun to play with everywhere, like in every mode. It's just been a blast to be able to use him and do whatever you want, really. So.
Yeah, and there was a rumor out a couple weeks ago that they were coming out with red stars for Scroll and potentially even 7. And then I did hear more recently on one of Mobile Gamer's videos. He's not sure if that's still the case. So I was shocked when I heard that, because like you said, he is just dominating everywhere. Like he doesn't need more power yet, and that would be really scary. So
yeah.
All right. Well, KP, these are the final recommendations. Again, really appreciate you sending this and being willing to do this with me. It's been a blast, and definitely hope it helps you and want to see you get up to diamond where you want to get. Any final thoughts or final questions?
No, not really. Thanks, thanks for having me. I appreciate that you taking the time and going through my roster to let me know what I'm doing wrong. I can't express my, how grateful I am for that, because I felt a little lost and I didn't know how much research I could do on my own, and even once I did, where I would get. So this is super helpful, and I'll come see you in about 3 weeks when it switches over.
Hey, absolutely. Will be fun to theory craft and figure out with the new room rules when they are announced. And man, you're beating yourself up a little. I'll say some room for improvement, but you're a hell of a player. We're
Thank you.
thrilled to have you in the alliance as a captain, and you are very good at this game. So, but every once in a while, just need a little shot, and hopefully this helps you and get you where you need to go.
Thank you.
All right. Well, guys, that's the video today. Hopefully you can take some of this advice and either copy it if you agreed with it, or, take the same approach and strategy to help you plan your teams to finish out this season and get into next. But diamonds are so important right now. So get on that Crucible, get where you want to get, and be opening those diamonds. So again, huge thank you to Kicking Pigeons. It's been a blast, man. Hope everyone has a good night. As always, I give you my word that this is the best advice I have. All I have in this world is my balls and my word, and I don't break them for no one. Peace.